A baby found a pregnant golden retriever half buried in mud. What the baby did next left everyone in tears. And what happened afterward, well, that will truly shock you. This is a story of courage, hope, and the powerful bond between a child and a creature in need. If this touches your heart, don't forget to like, share, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. The small town of Pineville wasn't known for much. Tucked away between thick woods and rolling green hills, it was the kind of quiet place where everyone waved hello, where the biggest event of the year was the pumpkin thing, and where nothing out of the ordinary ever really happened. For Hannah Marshall, it had become a safe haven. She had moved there to start fresh, to leave the chaos of city life behind and raise her son somewhere peaceful. But peace didn't mean easy. As a single mom juggling 2 jobs, waitressing at the local diner in the morning and working the register at the corner store in the evening, Hannah was always moving. Her days were filled with chores, stress, and that ever-present knot in her chest over money, tomorrow, and most of all, her little boy. Noah was 5 years old, with stone gray eyes that always seemed to be searching for something. He was quiet. Too quiet. For 8 months, he hadn't spoken a single word. Not since that night. Doctors called it selective mutism, triggered by trauma. Hannah called it heartbreak. Noah, sweetheart, stay where mommy can see you, Hannah called out as she hung damp laundry in the yard behind their tiny rental house. Their home sat at the edge of town. Just beyond it, the forest waited, thick and dark and filled with secrets. Noah didn't respond, he never did, but he gave a little nod, his serious little face poking out from a pile of rustling leaves he had gathered. Hannah smiled softly and tried not to worry. He was always quiet, even before the incident. He felt everything so deeply. Mrs. Peterson, their elderly neighbor with the kind eyes and a knack for saying the exact thing Hannah needed to hear, often remarked, "That boy of yours, Hannah, he's got an old soul. Sees things we miss." And maybe that was true. Noah had a strange, gentle way with animals. Stray cats followed him down the street like they were enchanted. Birds would land beside him like he was one of them. Once, Hannah had come outside to find him sitting completely still while a wild rabbit munched clover from his open palm. 10 more minutes, then lunch, she called to him as she pinned the last towel to the clothesline. The October air carried the scent of damp leaves and the promise of rain. Dark clouds loomed over the treetops, and Hannah frowned. The forecast had warned of a storm, and their roof already leaked in 3 places. She sighed and turned back toward the house. Noah was gone. Her heart dropped. "Noah," she called, scanning the yard. "Noah." The empty laundry basket clattered to the ground as she rushed to the edge of their property, where the grass met the tree line. The forest stood still and heavy. It seemed to stare back at her. And then she saw it. Tiny footprints in the damp earth. One after another, leading directly into the woods. Her stomach twisted. "Noah, please," she whispered as she ran, following the prints through the underbrush. She had told him never to go into the forest. There were too many dangers. Steep drops, thickets of brambles, and somewhere out there, the old abandoned quarry filled with water. And worse than all of that, Hannah's mind wandered into darker places. Memories of people who had taken too much from her before. The trees thickened around her, branches clawing at her clothes. She called his name again and again, her voice raw with panic. Then, just as her legs started to give out, she heard a soft sound. Not a cry. Not a voice. A low, whining whimper. And Noah's outline, still, crouched, visible through a break in the trees. She burst into the clearing and found him kneeling beside something in the mud. It was a dog. A golden retriever, her thick fur matted with dirt and leaves. Her golden coat was dull and streaked with mud. She was partially buried, like she had been trying to dig herself out or had been left there. Heavy chain links twisted around her neck, the end of it staked deep into the ground. She was pregnant. Her sides were swollen, her breaths shallow. She whined again, barely a sound, but her eyes, honey brown and blazed with exhaustion, were locked on Noah. And Noah? He was trying to dig. His tiny hands scooping at the earth, his face calm but focused. Tears streamed silently down his cheeks. He didn't make a sound. Didn't need to. Hannah dropped to her knees beside them. Her son had found this creature. This dog who should have been beyond saving. We need to get her out, Hannah said, and she started to dig. Her hands clawed through the muck beside her son's. Rain began to thaw, light at first, then heavier. The soil turned to sludge. Her nails split, her palms bled, but she kept digging. So did Noah. Lightning flashed overhead. Thunder rolled across the sky. Still, they worked. Until the chain was exposed. I need something to cut this, Hannah muttered. She fumbled in her coat pocket and found her old keychain multi-tool. Tiny wire cutters, not meant for anything like this. Still, it was all she had. She squeezed with all her might. The rusty wire groaned, bent, but didn't snap. Come on, she whispered. She tried again. Again. Until finally. Snap. The chain broke free. The dog whimpered but didn't move. She was too weak. But she was free. One thing at a time, Hannah said, brushing hair from her face. We'll get her clean. Warm. Safe. The golden retriever was barely conscious. But when Noah reached out and rested a hand on her head, her tail gave a tiny, tired wag. That was all Hannah needed to see. They named her Luna. It just came out, quietly, as Hannah carried the dog through the front door, muddy, bleeding, and barely conscious. Noah had whispered it, just once, as they laid the dog down on a folded blanket near the bathroom. Luna. It fit. They worked quickly. The rain outside had turned into a full-blown storm, pounding against the windows, as if trying to get in. Inside the small bathroom, it was chaos in its own way, soft towels layered in the tub, warm water running, Hannah gently cleaning the mud from Luna's tangled fur. She didn't resist. Didn't growl. Didn't flinch. She just lay there, sides heaving with effort, her eyes half-lidded with exhaustion. In the warm light, Hannah could finally see the full extent of Luna's condition. Her golden coat, where it wasn't caked in dried blood or muck, was patchy and dull. Her ribs were sharp beneath her skin. And her legs, God, her legs, were torn in places, angry red gashes where the wire had dug into her flesh. Some looked infected. Still, she made no sound. Noah stood close, watching everything. His eyes were wide but calm, as if this was the most important thing he'd ever seen. Maybe it was. He brought towels, fetched warm water, gently dabbed at Luna's face with a soft cloth. He never spoke. But his presence filled the room. Hannah's phone buzzed on the sink. With shaking hands, she dialed the number for the local vet, Dr. Martinez. He wasn't just their vet, he was one of the few people in town Hannah trusted. Doc, it's Hannah, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. We found a dog. She's in bad shape, pregnant, injured, and barely holding on. He asked a few questions quickly, breathing, bleeding, condition. Then he paused. Hannah, I'd tell you to bring her in, but with this storm. Hannah looked at Luna. She thought of her gas tank, nearly empty. I don't think I can get her there safely. Another pause. Give me your address. I'll come to you. She nearly dropped the phone in relief. She gave the address, whispered 1,000 thank yous, and turned back to the bathroom. Noah was sitting beside Luna now, one small hand resting gently on her head. Her breathing was still labored, but slower now. Her tail thumped weakly when Noah leaned in and pressed his forehead against hers. The minutes stretched. Then headlights flashed outside the window. Dr. Martinez was fast. He arrived soaked through, rain still falling in sheets around his coat. He brought his bag in without hesitation, his face set in calm determination. "She's in the bathroom," Hannah said. He crouched beside Luna, checking vitals, murmuring softly to her like she was his own. He lifted a paw gently, winced at the damage, then turned to Hannah. "I'm going to be honest," he said, his voice low. "Her condition is very serious. She's septic in at least one leg. And the puppies, they're at risk too." Noah didn't flinch. His hand tightened slightly on Luna's fur, but his face stayed still. "Watching. Listening. She's made it this far," Hannah said, her voice trembling. "She's a fighter." Dr. Martinez nodded. "Then we help her fight." He got to work quickly. He opened his bag, set out equipment, prepped injections, and cleaned wounds with practiced ease. As he worked, the storm outside raged louder. Suddenly, Luna let out a low whine. Her body trembled. Then another whine, louder this time. A contraction. "She's going into labor," Dr. Martinez said, glancing at Hannah. "It's too soon. She's too weak to push properly." Hannah's heart twisted. "What can we do?" "I'll have to assist," he said, already snapping on gloves. "If we wait, we could lose her and the puppies." What followed was chaos, laced with fear and quiet courage. Dr. Martinez worked with the intensity of someone who had done this hundreds of times, and knew every second counted. Sometimes he whispered encouragement to Luna. Other times he gave Hannah instructions. "Boil water. Bring towels. Hold this light." Noah stayed silent but didn't leave Luna's side. At one point, Dr. Martinez paused long enough to glance at him and mutter, "He's amazing. Not afraid at all." And then, finally, a wet, wriggling puppy slid free. It didn't cry at first. Hannah's heart stopped. But then Luna, despite everything, lifted her head and began licking it. The tiny thing gasped, then let out a high-pitched squeak. "Alive." Dr. Martinez smiled. One down. The next two followed within 20 minutes. Each one delicate, trembling, perfect. Each one welcomed into the world by a mother who should have been too weak to move but still found the strength to tend. Hannah watched in awe. She had never seen anything like it. The fifth puppy came with difficulty. Dr. Martinez's brow furrowed as he worked. "This one's stuck," he muttered. Ford rapped. "I'll need to be fast." Noah reached for his mother's hand without looking. His tiny fingers squeezed hers. She squeezed back. And then, at last, the fifth pup was free. The sixth came quickly after. 6 puppies. All breathing. All alive. Dr. Martinez shook his head, wiping sweat from his brow. "It's more than I hoped for. She's incredible." But Hannah wasn't looking at Luna. She was staring at Noah. Her son. Who hadn't spoken in 8 months. Who had run into the forest alone. Who had found Luna, dug her out, and sat silently beside her. Who had now helped bring 6 lives into the world. Noah looked up at her. And said, "She's ours." Just 2 words. Whispered. But they struck Hannah like thunder. Her hand went to her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks. Her baby had spoken. He had spoken to protect someone else. The house was quiet except for the soft breathing of sleeping puppies and the occasional groan of the old roof settling under the storm. Dr. Martinez had done all he could for Luna. Her legs were bandaged, her body wrapped in worn blankets, and her pups nestled safely against her belly. She was still weak, her sides rising and falling in uneven rhythm, but her eyes were alert, flicking between Noah and Hannah as they moved around the room. "She's stable, for now," Dr. Martinez said, glancing at the 4-drip he'd managed to rig using a coat hanger and a plant hook from the ceiling. "She's producing milk. That's a good sign. Her body's trying." "Will she make it?" Hannah asked. She had cleaned herself up, but she looked exhausted. Her damp hair clung to her forehead, and her eyes were puffy from crying. "She's got a better chance now than she did a few hours ago," he replied, then added gently, "but it's still touch and go. Especially with the infection. And if it spreads." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Noah was curled up beside Luna, his tiny fingers brushing lightly through her damp fur. Luna responded with a soft thump of her tail, the movement slow but certain. "She trusts in," Martinez said quietly, watching them. "Most injured dogs don't tolerate touch, even from vets. But she lets in near her puppies." Hannah nodded slowly. She knew he meant no harm. From the moment they found each other. The vet began packing up his supplies, moving efficiently despite the late hour. "I'll need to come back tomorrow to check on her wounds and the pups," he said. "In the meantime, keep her warm. Don't let her get up unless she has to." "Thank you," Hannah said, her voice trembling again. "Really, thank you for coming out in the middle of a storm." Martinez offered a tired smile. "You did the hard part. You saved her." He paused in the doorway before leaving. "You know, your son has a gift. I don't just mean with animals. He has a kind of presence that calms them. Guides them." "He's 5, Hannah said, a soft chuckle escaping him. "And until today, he hadn't said a word in nearly a year." "Maybe Luna gave him back his voice," Martinez said. "Or maybe it was always there, he just needed a reason." The door closed behind him with a gust of wind. Hannah stood for a long moment, staring at the sleeping thorns in her living room. Luna curled protectively around her pups. Noah dozing beside her, one hand still resting lightly on the dog's palm. She pulled a blanket around her shoulders and sat beside them. Eventually, sleep found her too. But it didn't last. At precisely 8:15 the next morning, a knock rattled the front door. Luna stirred. Her ears perked, and a low, warning rumble vibrated in her throat. Hannah blinked awake and stood cautiously. She peeked through the curtain and saw a patrol car parked at the curb. A state trooper in uniform stood on the porch. Tall. Square jaw. Mirror sunglasses. Hannah's stomach dropped. She opened the door slowly, keeping her body angled toward the living room. "Morning," the trooper said with a nod. "Are you Miss Hannah Marshall?" "Yes. I'm Sergeant James Teller. I need to ask you a few questions about a dog in your possession." "A golden retriever." Hannah's jaw tightened. "She's not in my possession. She's recovering in my tent. She was chained up and half buried in the woods when we found her." Teller didn't react. His voice was flat, almost rehearsed. "That dog is state property. I'm going to need you to release her to me immediately." "State property?" Hannah repeated. She was starving. Pregnant. Left to die in the mud. "She was part of a special training program," Teller replied. "Sensitive material. I'm afraid I can't disclose further details. But she is classified as government equipment." Hannah's pulse pounded in her ears. "No. I don't think so. I want to see some proof. Documents. Paperwork. Anything that shows she belongs to you." Teller's expression hardened. "Refusing to cooperate could be considered theft of government property. That's a felony, Ms. Marshall." "I'm not giving her up," she said, standing her ground. "Not until I know who you are and why she was abandoned in the first place." Behind her, Luna's growl grew louder. The trooper glanced over her shoulder. His posture shifted. Not a lot, but just enough. His hand twitched toward his hip. Hannah froze. Before anything else could happen, a new voice cut in from the driveway. "Sergeant." Another officer was approaching, this one in plain clothes, badge visible on her belt. "Officer Reyes, local PD," she said, holding up her ID. "I'd like to have a word before anything escalates." Teller turned slightly, visibly annoyed. "This is a state matter." Reyes didn't blink. "That may be, but we have overlapping jurisdiction. Let's talk outside." Hannah stepped back and closed the door. Her hands were shaking. Luna had moved closer to Noah, placing herself between him and the door. Her body was tense, but her gaze was locked firmly on the space where Teller had stood. "She knew him," Hannah whispered, her voice cracking. She recognized him, and she was terrified. She sank to the floor, wrapping her arms around Noah. He didn't speak, but he pressed his forehead to her shoulder, silently trembling. Outside, the two officers argued in low tones. When Officer Reyes finally returned inside, her face was tight with concern. "There's something off about this," she said, her voice low. "Teller has no proper documentation. His name checks out, but nothing in the system says he's currently assigned to T9 recovery. And that program? There's almost no record of it. Anyway. What does that mean?" Hannah asked. Reyes frowned. "I don't know. But I'm going to find out." She glanced down at Luna and the puppies, then at Noah, who hadn't moved. "I'd keep her inside. And stay close to home for now." Hannah nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. Reyes hesitated, then added, "I'll be back tomorrow." "You're not alone." As the door shut behind her, Hannah looked at her son and whispered, "She's not going anywhere." Luna lifted her head slowly and licked Noah's hand. Her tail, weak as it was, thumped once against the floor. That evening, Hannah barely touched her dinner. She sat at the kitchen table, fingers laced tightly around a lukewarm mug of tea, staring blankly at her laptop screen. She couldn't stop thinking about Teller. About the threat behind his calm voice. The way Luna reacted, how her body had frozen in fear, how that low, primal growl had rumbled from deep within her chest. Noah sat cross-legged on the floor nearby, quietly watching the puppies nurse. He hadn't spoken since that morning. But he didn't need to. His silence wasn't the same anymore. It wasn't hollow. It was full. Watchful. Protective. Luna was awake now. Weak, yes. But aware. Her golden eyes tracked every sound, every movement. She didn't flinch when Hannah approached or when Noah leaned in to check on the smallest pup. She just trusted them. Hannah took a deep breath, opened her search engine, and began typing. Golden Retriever Military Training Program. Classified T9 Programs U.S. Government. T9 Retrieval Officer James Teller. She sifted through pages of links. Mostly nothing. Old articles about bone-sniffing dogs. Obedience trials. One story about a retired search and rescue dog abandoned at a shelter. But no mention of Luna. Nothing about a current program matching Teller's description. She narrowed the search. Project Moonlight. That was what Officer Reyes had said earlier, muttering about overlapping jurisdictions and whispered rumors from contacts in another department. And suddenly, there it was. A single buried article from a military tech blog dated merely 2 years ago. The headline read, DoD cancels controversial enhanced sensory K9 project after internal review. Hannah's stomach dropped. She clicked the link. The article was vague, mostly speculation. It described a short-lived government initiative to develop working dogs with amplified perception and intuition, dogs that could track enemies by scent, recognize patterns in chaotic environments, and even anticipate danger. They were calling it Project Moonlight. The article claimed the program had been scrapped after early testing. No results. No official commentary. One unnamed source said a few animals were decommissioned and sent to civilian shelters for quiet retirement. There was nothing else. No names. No photos. No mention of Luna. But Hannah couldn't shake the feeling in her gut. She looked at Luna again, her soft golden coat, those knowing eyes, the way she reacted to Talon. This wasn't just any dog. Noah crawled onto the couch and curled up beside her. Luna shifted so that two puppies could wiggle closer to him. She licked his cheek, and he smiled softly in his sleep. Later that night, just after midnight, Hannah heard a noise. A soft click. Then another. She sat upright, heart pounding, and crept to the front window. A dark SUV was parked across the street. Lights off. Engine idling. Hannah's breath caught. She turned off the living room lights, crept into Noah's room, and peered through the curtain. The SUV was still there. She didn't sleep after that. In the morning, Dr. Martinez returned. He examined Luna carefully, checked her wounds, assessed her energy, and cleaned the puppies one by one. She's healing, he said, relief clear in his voice. The infection's receding. And these pups are strong. Especially that little runt. Feisty. Noah beamed. He was so careful with the smallest puppy, holding it in both hands like it was the most precious thing in the world. Dr. Martinez watched him for a long moment before turning to Hannah. Have you thought about what happens next? What do you mean? I mean, if that man comes back. Hannah's jaw clenched. I won't let them take him. Or the puppies. Or Noah. Martinez nodded slowly. I may have an idea. A place they could go. Somewhere remote, safe. My sister has a rescue farm 2 hours north. Off-grid, quiet. No roads lead there without a map. Hannah hesitated. Could she really uproot everything? Pack up her son and a recovering dog with 6 newborn puppies and disappear? But then she remembered the SUV. The tension in Luna's body when Teller walked in. We'll go, she said. As soon as we can. Martinez gave her a map, hand-drawn, with the back roads and landmarks marked in red ink. I'll bring my truck tomorrow morning. I'll handle the transportation. Just be ready. Noah listened quietly from the hallway. Later that day, while Hannah was packing essentials, he tugged gently on her sleeve and pointed at Luna. Then he held up 7 fingers. Hannah blinked. 7. He nodded, then pointed to Luna's belly. Then to the basket where the puppies were sleeping. I don't understand. Noah repeated the gesture, this time more emphatically. Luna watched him, her eyes soft and calm. Hannah crouched beside them. You think there's another one? Noah nodded again, then pressed his hand gently against Luna's side. She didn't flinch. Instead, her body tensed ever so slightly. And then Hannah felt it, beneath her fingertips, a flutter. Movement. Luna, she whispered. Is that another puppy? She picked up her phone and called Dr. Martinez again. He arrived with a portable ultrasound an hour later. Noah helped set up the machine, moving like an assistant who'd done this a dozen times before. When the image appeared on screen, the vet's eyes widened. There's one more, he confirmed. He's alive, but small. Weak. She may not be able to push again on her own. What can we do? She'll need help again. And we need to act fast. The tension in the room was immediate. Noah moved beside Luna, knelt down, and placed his hand right over the spot where the image on the screen had flickered. He closed his eyes. Luna let out a low sound, Not a whine this time, but something more like a sigh. She shifted, her body stretching out just slightly. Then she tensed. A contraction. The vet moved quickly, positioning her, guiding her through it. Noah never moved. After 30 long minutes, the final puppy slipped into the world. Tiny. Damp. But breathing. Hannah stared, her chest aching with emotion. "He's so small," she whispered. Dr. Martinez smiled. "But he's here." They wrapped him in a woolen cloth and placed him beside his siblings. Luna licked his head, gently nudging him until he found him. He began nursing. 7 puppies, the vet said softly. All alive. She's a miracle. Noah didn't say a word. But his eyes were full of something vast and ancient, something that looked a lot like love. Morning broke cold and gray. Mist hung low over the hills, curling around the treetops like breath frozen in time. Hannah stood at the kitchen sink, staring out the window, mug of coffee forgotten in her hands. The final puppy had made it through the night. He was still small, still fragile, but nestled against Luna like he belonged there all along. His siblings, 6 worn bodies pressed close, seemed to make room for him instinctively, without question. The way a family does. Dr. Martinez arrived just after sunrise, just as he had promised. His truck was large and sturdy, a former livestock transport he'd retrofitted with padded carriers and heat lamps. It had carried injured animals before, horses, deer, even an owl with a broken wing once. Today, it would carry something far more precious. Hannah helped him carry supplies inside. Noah stood near Luna, holding the puppy basket in both hands like it was sacred. He didn't speak. But his movements were careful, reverent, as if he understood the weight of what they were about to do. Martinez crouched beside Luna. "You ready, girl?" he asked softly, brushing her ears. Luna raised her head, eyes alert. Her tail gave a soft thump. "We'll go slow," he said, glancing at Hannah. "Let her take her time." Together, they gently lifted Luna onto a stretcher. Her muscles twitched in protest, but she didn't whimper or fight. She simply looked toward Noah. He moved to her side without hesitation. "I'll ride in the back," Hannah said. "With her and the puppies." Martinez nodded. "I'll drive ahead, and we'll take the long route, back roads only. Less chance of being followed." The final preparations took less than an hour. Clothes, baby supplies, bed equipment. Hannah carried what little cash she had in a duffel bag with a few legal documents. Before they left, she paused at the front door, staring back at the small home they were leaving behind. It wasn't much, but it had been their safe place. Their beginning. Now, they were stepping into something else. They didn't know exactly what. Only that it had to be better than the shadow trying to take Luna back. The drive was long. Quiet. Noah sat in the back of the truck beside Luna, one hand on her thumb. She watched him the entire time, golden eyes unblinking. Hannah, wedged in beside the crate of puppies, watched the horizon. Every turn, every passing car felt like a threat. But they made it. By mid-afternoon, they turned off the main road and began climbing a long, winding trail that led into a secluded forest valley. And then, through the trees, it appeared. A small farmhouse. Weathered but strong. A red barn behind it. Several fenced pastures. Solar panels glinting in the sunlight. Martinez's sister, Elena, greeted them with open arms. She was younger than Hannah expected, early 40s, dark braid down her back, a leather apron stained with herbs and hay. "You brought the golden girl," Elena said, kneeling to meet Luna's eyes. "And her babies." She helped carry them inside, through a mudroom and into a cozy back room that smelled faintly of lavender and clean hay. "This will be her den," Elena said. "Soft bedding, controlled temperature, no predators." It's built into the side of the hill, naturally insulated. Luna was placed in the center, her body sinking into the thick straw and fleece. Her head rested beside her pups instantly. She sighed deeply. A sound of safety. That night, they stayed on the farm. Martinez left just before dark, promising to return soon with more antibiotics and Luna's official records, what little of them you could get without raising flags. Hannah slept fitfully, half listening through cars on the gravel path outside. But none came. In the early hours of dawn, she awoke to find Noah standing near Luna's pen. He wasn't looking at her or the puppies. He was staring at the far wall. She stepped beside him, following his gaze. Carved into the stone was a faded symbol, a crescent moon above a paw print. Elena, now stirring in the kitchen, noticed. That was already here when we bought the place, she said casually. No idea who carved it. Some old homesteader maybe. Hannah frowned. Or someone else. Noah turned to her then, his expression unreadable. He pointed to the symbol, then back to Luna. Then he placed a finger to his lips. A secret. A connection. They didn't talk about it again that day. Instead, they helped Elena with chores. Feeding goats. Collecting eggs. Gathering herbs from the garden. Noah smiled more than she'd seen in months. Not big, toothy grins, but small, content ones. Like he was beginning to believe they were safe. Later, he sat with Luna again. The smallest puppy, the seventh, crawled into his lap. He didn't push it away. Just stroked its soft fur, silent in tone. That evening, Officer Reyes called. I think they were watching your house, she said without preamble. They showed up 20 minutes after you left. Claimed it was a wellness check. I told them nothing. Hannah's throat tightened. They know we ran. Maybe. But they won't admit it. And there's no warrant. Yet. Do they know about the seventh puppy? Reyes paused. I doubt it. That might be your only edge. She promised to stay in touch. After the call, Hannah sat beside Luna. I don't know what they did to you, she said quietly. But you're not going back. Not now. Not ever. Luna licked her hand. And then, as if summoned by something deeper, Noah spoke. She's not just a dog, he said softly. She sees things. Feels them. Like I do. Hannah didn't question it. She didn't ask how he knew. She just nodded. And held her son close. 2 days passed in peaceful silence. For the first time in what felt like forever, Hannah wasn't waking up in fear. No strange cars on the road. No knocks at the door. Just the chirping of birds, the rustling of leaves, and the quiet breaths of Noah as he slept nestled beside the puppies. Luna was healing faster than anyone expected. The wounds on her legs, once raw and infected, now scabbed clean. Her coat, though still patchy, had begun to gleam again under Elena's care and homemade salves. But most remarkable of all was her spirit. She watched over the pups with endless patience. She listened intently to Noah's murmurs. And sometimes, in the quietest hours, Hannah could swear Luna was listening to her thoughts too. On the third day, Elena returned from a trip into town with supplies and news. They're asking questions, she said, her voice low. Not just telling. There's another name now. Cerberus Security. Hannah's blood ran cold. That name had come up in her late-night searches. A private military contractor. Officially licensed, unofficially notorious. They're looking for something they lost, Elena continued. They just won't say what. Hannah didn't have to guess. Luna was what they lost. Or maybe, what they tried to bury. That afternoon, Reyes arrived unexpectedly. She drove a rental truck, no cruiser, no badge, just a worried look and a folder of papers tucked under her arm. "They're escalating," she said the moment she stepped inside. "They filed a motion with the state to reclaim government property. It doesn't name Luna, but it doesn't have to. They're using vague language. Strategic ambiguity." She handed Hannah the file. Inside were blurry photographs, heavily redacted memos, and a list of recovered assets from a classified facility decommissioned 6 months ago. Luna's ID tag was then listed simply as Prototype 7G, Sensory Enhancement, Stage 3, Breeding Termination Pending. Hannah's knees buckled. "They were going to destroy her," she whispered. "They tried to," Reyes said bitterly. "They thought they had. My contact said Prototype 7G went missing during a routine transfer. Van overturned in a flood zone. No survivors reported. No bodies recovered. But Luna survived," Hannah breathed. "She dug herself out. Or tried to." Reyes nodded grimly. "And now they know she didn't die. Which means they'll be back." Noah, who had been sitting silently nearby, stood up. He walked to Luna, knelt beside her, and looked at the adults. Then he spoke. "Not without me." His voice was soft but certain. Stronger than Hannah had ever heard it. Luna licked his cheek. Reyes blinked in surprise. "He spoke?" Hannah smiled through tears. "He speaks when it matters." Reyes knelt beside them. "There's more." My contact pulled a personnel file on Telin. He was not a standard officer. He worked in special acquisitions under Cerberus. No badge. No accountability. His job was to retrieve runaway prototypes. "Like Luna," Hannah said. Reyes nodded. "They won't stop just because she's got puppies or because she's bonded with Noah. If anything, that makes her more valuable. She wasn't supposed to form emotional bonds. It's unprecedented." Elena leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "Then they underestimated him. And us," Hannah added. That night, they started preparing for the worst. Reyes helped them install reinforced locks and cameras along the tree line. Elena reinforced the barn walls and created an emergency exit tunnel beneath the far stall, just in case they needed to disappear again. Dr. Martinez returned the following morning, visibly shaken. "They visited my clinic," he said. 2 men in suits. Claimed to be with animal control. But they asked about a golden retriever with sensitive training indicators. I played dumb, but they're tracking footprints now. Looking at gas station footage, farm supply store logs. Anything. Noah tugged at his sleeve. "They won't find her," he said softly. "We're part of her now. That matters." Martinez looked at him, startled. Then slowly, he nodded. Later, when the house was quiet, Hannah asked Reyes the question that had been haunting her since they left Pineville. "What is she?" Reyes looked at Luna lying nearby, one paw protectively draped over her puppies. "She's a survivor," Reyes said. "A mother. A miracle. And maybe something more. But why make her?" Hannah pressed. "Why do this at all?" Reyes hesitated. "There's a rumor," she said finally. "That Project Moonlight wasn't about obedience or combat. It was about perception. About bridging the gap between human intuition and animal instinct. They thought if they could build a dog that could see what we feel, they could weaponize empathy. Imagine a canine that could sense ambushes, detect lies, or lead soldiers to safety just by instinct." "That's monstrous," Hannah whispered. "Yeah," Reyes agreed. They never stopped to ask what it would do to the dog. Silence settled between them. Then Noah's voice came from the hallway. "She's not a weapon." They turned. He stood in the doorway, cradling the smallest puppy in his arms. She's light, he said. That's what the name means, right? Moonlight? She shows the way. No one spoke after that. There was nothing to say. Later that night, just after 2 a.m., Luna woke Hannah with a growl. Low. Warning. Hannah sat upright instantly. Noah was already awake, sitting beside the window. He pointed. Headlights. Moving slowly down the back road. No engine noise. Elena came into the room, shotgun in hand. They found us. Reyes moved to the window. That's not law enforcement. Their lights are off. What do we do? Hannah asked, grabbing Noah's coat. Reyes turned to her, eyes hard. You run. Through the tunnel. Take Luna. Take the puppies. I'll stay here. Buy you time. I'm not leaving you. You have to. This isn't about me anymore. It's about her. Then she paused, looking directly at Noah. And him. Noah nodded. No tears. No hesitation. The tunnel was narrow and dark. Dug into the hillside, reinforced with wood and lined with gravel to muffle sound. It led nearly 50 yards away to a tree-covered clearing. Noah led the way, carrying the puppy basket with both hands. Hannah followed with Luna, who linked but didn't resist. They emerged into the mist, breathless. Behind them, gunfire cracked through the stillness. A flare lit up the sky in red. Luna growled low, her hackles raised. Noah touched her side. Not now, he whispered. We have to keep moving. And they did. Deeper into the forest. Away from everything they knew. Toward whatever came next. But not alone. Never alone. The forest seemed to swallow them whole. Each step forward was uncertain. Tree roots snaked across the narrow path, and low branches clawed at Hannah's coat. But the sound of gunfire behind them pushed her on. Luna moved with surprising steadiness, her body bruised but determined. Noah never looked back. They walked for over an hour before they finally stopped. A rocky outcropping jutted out from a hillside just beyond the ravine. Beneath it, a shallow cave mouth yawned, hidden by ivy and fallen leaves. Hannah stepped inside first. It's dry, she whispered. Big enough for all of us. Noah carried the puppy basket in carefully, setting it down against the wall. The pups were silent, huddled close, but their tiny bodies rose and fell in steady rhythm. Lena linked and last, curling her body protectively around them without hesitation. Only then did Noah collapse beside her, his small chest heaving. We're safe, for now, Hannah whispered, placing her hand gently on his back. The cave was cold but quiet. Outside, wind rustled the treetops, masking distant sounds. If anyone was trapping them, they'd have to rely on something more than flashlights and maps. That was when Noah pointed again, at the seventh puppy. The smallest. The one who always seemed to follow him with its eyes, even when the others slept. What is it, sweetie? Hannah asked, kneeling. He didn't answer. Instead, he placed a hand gently on the puppy's head. His eyes closed. And something shifted. The air in the cave grew warmer. Not in temperature, but in presence. A kind of humming. Soft and low, like a melody carried on wind too ancient to name. Luna raised her head. Her eyes began to glow faintly, not the blinding blue Hannah had seen before, but a softer light. Moonlight. And then the visions came. They weren't dreams. Not quite. They weren't memories either. It was as if Hannah had become Luna, even for a second. She saw flashes of cages, men in lab coats, surgical lights. Cold steel and barking that wasn't from pain, it was from confusion. She saw Teller's face, close and angry. He was shouting. She couldn't hear the words, but the rage in his eyes was unmistakable. Then, suddenly, a flood. A van overturned. Mud rushing in through broken windows. Luna, chained inside, fighting the current. And then, Noah. A small figure silhouetted against gray sky, reaching out through the mud and roots. The vision ended abruptly. Hannah gasped, falling back onto the cold stone floor. Noah looked at her calmly. As if he'd been expecting that. "You saw?" he asked, his voice small. She nodded. "Yes. I saw it all." Luna's eyes returned to normal. She licked Noah's hand and let out a long, quiet sigh. "She remembers everything," Hannah whispered. "And she shared it with us." Noah placed a finger to his lips. "Still a secret," he said softly. They stayed in the cave until dawn. No one spoke much. There was no need. The truth hung in the space between them like a living thing. Luna wasn't just a survivor. She wasn't just a mother. She was something more, something made, yes, but not broken. Not anymore. When the sun finally rose, casting light through the tangled canopy, Hannah stepped out and scanned the forest. No vehicles. No soldiers. No telling. Just the rustling of the world waking up. "We can't stay here forever," she said as she re-entered the cave. "I know," Noah answered. He was feeding the puppies a mixture Elena had packed, formula laced with warm goat's milk. "We have to find the next place. One they can't follow." "And how do we do that?" she asked gently. He looked at her and, for the first time, smiled. "She'll show us." That afternoon, they moved again. Not far. Just deeper. Luna led this time. Despite her injuries, she walked with purpose, her ears twitching at every sound. She paused often, sniffing, listening, and then continued. Hours passed. Then, through a break in the trees, a structure appeared, an old fire tower. The ladder was rusted, but the cabin at the top was intact. Below it, a storage shed still stood, partly hidden by overgrowth. They approached cautiously. Inside the shed, they found old supplies, canned goods, bottled water, even a working hand-crank radio. "This must have been a ranger station," Hannah said, peering around. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. A waypoint. A breath between chases. As the sun dipped low, they set up camp. Noah helped Hannah patch the windows with plastic sheeting while Luna kept watch near the entrance. At night, Hannah lay beside Noah on a worn mattress someone had left behind years ago. The puppies nestled against Luna in a blanket-lined crate nearby. "Do you think Teller will find us again?" Noah asked. "I think he'll try. But we'll be ready." Hannah didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached out and pulled him close. "Next time, we're not just running," she whispered. "We're fighting." They didn't have to wait long. Just before dawn the next day, the forest trembled. It started with the distant thrum of engines, several of them. Not the gentle hum of a car. These were heavier. Tactical. Meant for terrain like this. Hannah jolted awake, her hand already reaching for the bag where she'd hidden the small revolver Reyes had left behind. Noah was already up. He stood by the window of the fire tower's cabin, looking out with calm intensity. He wasn't afraid. Just alert. A part of him had always known this moment would come again. Luna stood beside him, the seventh puppy tucked beneath one paw. Her golden eyes shimmered faintly. "They're close," Noah said softly. "Time to move," Hannah whispered. She opened the emergency hatch in the floor, revealing the ladder that led down into the base of the tower. They'd prepped it the night before, a rope line already tied, supplies bundled into quick grab bags. Everything they couldn't carry would be left behind. Hannah placed the puppies carefully into a padded basket strapped across her chest. Noah helped Luna down slowly, the dog limping but silent, her eyes constantly scanning the trees. By the time they hit the forest floor, the vehicles were closer, louder now. They could hear voices too, barking orders, spreading out. They ran. Not blindly, Luna led the way. There was something strange about the way she moved now. As if her senses were expanding. She seemed to feel the space around them like sonar, dodging roots and traps before they even became visible. Noah ran behind her, completely in sync. They'd gone maybe a mile when it started to rain. First a drizzle. Then sheets of cold water pouring through the trees. The kind of rain that drowns sound, muddies tracks, and chills to the bone. But it also slowed their pursuers. They made it to the river by early afternoon. It wasn't wide, but it was fast, fed by the storm, its current angry and brown. "We can't cross with the puppies," Hannah said, breathless. "They won't survive the current." Luna stepped forward. She dipped her paw in the water, then turned her head, leading them downstream. After 20 more minutes of slurping through slick rocks and soaked grass, they found it, a fallen tree, half submerged, creating a makeshift bridge across a narrow stretch of the river. "We try here," Hannah said. She helped Noah across first, Luna beside him. The log creaked under their weight, but it held. By the time they reached the other side, the rain had begun to ease. But then, gunshots. 3 sharp tracks behind them, echoing through the trees. "Go!" Hannah shouted, pushing Luna toward the brush. She turned to see Teller and 2 men emerge from the tree line. Teller looked different. Not the composed man from their first encounter. This time, his hair was wet and plastered to his forehead, and his eyes were wild. "She's ours," he growled, raising his weapon. "You can't hide her anymore." Luna let out a sound, half snarl, half howl. It wasn't fear. It was fury. She stepped in front of Noah, fur bristling, golden eyes beginning to glow again. Teller hesitated, lowering the weapon for a second. That was all Hannah needed. She raised the revolver. "Drop it," she ordered. He didn't. So she fired. The shot missed, on purpose, but it slammed into a tree beside his head, bark exploding in a warning blast. He dropped the gun. "I don't care what she was to you," Hannah said. "She's not your experiment anymore. She's family." "Do you even know what she is?" he shouted back. "She's not just some dog. She's the product of $10 million of development. Her mind has been rewired. Her DNA, modified. She can see through walls. Sense emotions. Transmit images to human brains. She's a weapon. And you're letting her bond with a child. She chose that child," Hannah said coldly. "And that makes her more human than you." Behind her, Luna's eyes began to glow brighter. The faint blue light spread outward, casting shadows against the rocks. Teller took a step back. "I'll find you," he muttered. "No matter where you go. I'll burn the whole forest down if I have to." "You'll never see her again," Noah said. Teller froze. It was the first time he'd heard the boy speak. Noah stepped forward, unafraid. "You hurt him. You chained him. You buried him. But she found us. And we won't let you take her back." Luna moved beside him, pressing her head gently to his shoulder. Teller stared for a moment longer. Then, without another word, he turned and disappeared into the trees, his men trailing behind him. The silence left behind was deafening. For a moment, all any of them could hear was the sound of the river and the rain. Then Hannah exhaled. "We need to keep moving." They traveled deep into the hills, far from any trail. It was days before they found another safe place, a remote homestead inhabited by a retired vet Elena had once worked with. He didn't ask questions. He just opened his doors. Over the next week, Luna's wounds healed almost completely. The puppies began to open their eyes. Noah spent hours beside them each day, gently naming them, whispering stories only they could understand. And Luna, she watched over it all. Each night, as they gathered around the wood stove, Noah would sometimes pause and point to the seventh puppy. "She's special," he'd whisper. "She dreams loud." Weeks passed. The world outside seemed to slow down, like time had taken a deep breath and decided to hold it. Hannah welcomed the quiet. The homestead was far from everything, no cell towers, no roads nearby, and no curious neighbors. Just pine trees, old wooden fences, and the whisper of wind through tall grass. It was the perfect place for healing. Luna grew stronger with each day. Her coat had regained its shine, and her limp had almost disappeared. She no longer startled at loud noises. Instead, she moved with a quiet confidence, watching Noah with unshakable trust. As for Noah, he bloomed. He spoke now. Not all the time, and never loudly, but his voice had returned. It came in soft, clear phrases. Simple observations. Gentle requests. Every word was a small miracle to Hannah. But the real changes were deeper. He'd started drawing images of places they'd never been, animals they'd never seen. Hannah once found a sketch tucked beneath his pillow. It showed Luna standing in a circle of light, surrounded by people with their eyes closed, as if dreaming. At the center of her chest, a glowing symbol pulsed like a heartbeat. She didn't ask him what it meant. She had a feeling you couldn't explain it even if you tried. Dr. Martinez visited when you could, bringing supplies and updates. So did Reyes, though less frequently. She'd been digging deeper into Cerberus security, and what she was finding chilled her. They're not done, she warned one afternoon. The prototype program wasn't scrapped, it was expanded. Luna was just one of 7. Maybe more. They want her back because she's the only one that worked. They'll never stop, will they? Hannah asked. Reyes shook her head. No. But we can slow them down. Maybe expose them. There are people who'd be very interested in what happened to her. But they'll want to use her too, Hannah said. She's not just evidence, she's a miracle. And miracles attract the wrong kind of attention. Reyes didn't argue. That night, as rain tapped gently against the windows of the small house, Hannah sat beside Luna and Noah by the fireplace. "Do you feel it too?" she asked softly. Luna lifted her head. "The connection," Hannah continued. "Whatever it is that lets you share your mind. I think. I've been feeling it." Noah looked up from his drawing. He nodded. "She's showing us how." "To do what?" "To listen." The room fell into silence. And then, as if on cue, Luna stood up and padded over to the window. She stared out into the dark for several long seconds. Then barked once, low and warning. Hannah froze. Reyes had set up motion sensors around the perimeter just in case. One of them triggered now, flashing silently on the small monitor beside the kitchen counter. Someone was out there. Hannah moved quickly. She shut off the lights. Grabbed the revolver from the drawer. Signaled to Noah to stay low with the puppies. Luna never took her eyes off the trees. Then, footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. A silhouette approached the front porch. One person. No weapon visible. A knock. Not loud. Just steady. Hannah opened the door a crack, gun raised. A man stood outside in a soaked raincoat, hands up. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said immediately. "Then you shouldn't be here at all." "I know," he said. "But I have to come. My name is Tom Teller." Hannah's breath caught. Nice try, she said. Tell her already came for him. He left bleeding. Tom shook his head. That wasn't me. That was my brother. James. The door opened wider. Tom looked nothing like the man they'd fled from weeks ago. His face was tired, his eyes sunken. He looked older than he probably was. I've been looking for her since the flood, he said quietly. To help. Not to reclaim. Luna stood beside Hannah now, her body still but tense. She doesn't trust you, Hannah said. She shouldn't, Tom agreed. My family were the reason she ended up in that ditch. But I wasn't part of the program. I walked away. James stayed. He changed. What do you want? Tom lowered his voice. To warn you. Hannah said nothing. They've activated retrieval teams. Not just for her, any prototype showing signs of empathetic divergence. That means any dog who chooses not to follow orders. They see it as a malfunction. They're wrong, Hannah snapped. It's not a malfunction. It's a sign. Tom nodded. That's why I'm here. I don't expect you to trust me. But I can help you disappear. Again. Better this time. And why would you help us? Tom hesitated. Because I saw what she did. Back then. In the lab. Before the crash. She found the child having a seizure just by laying beside her. She comforted a soldier who couldn't sleep without nightmares. No tech could replicate that. No training could create it. She chose to help. He paused. And I think maybe she's trying to help me now. Hannah looked at Luna. The golden retriever blinked slowly. Then, astonishingly, she stepped forward and gently placed her paw on Tom's shoe. Just once. Then returned to Noah. Tom stared at the paw print for a long moment. I'll be back tomorrow, he said softly. If you want to take the chance. Then he walked away. Back into the storm. Tom Teller returned the next morning, just as he said he would. He came alone. No trucks. No team. No weapons. Just a beat-up old Jeep and a paper map with half the road scratched out in red ink. This route here, he explained, spreading it out on the kitchen table, leads to a safe zone. It's not official, nothing ever is, but it's where others like her have gone. Off-grid. Monitored by civilians, not government. Others like her? Hannah asked. He nodded. Two confirmed. A third unverified. One's in Montana. Another in New Mexico. Both rescued by handlers who broke protocol, people who realized these animals weren't assets. They were survivors. Noah sat silently at the table, listening. Luna rested her head in his lap, tail thumping gently when Tom spoke. She remembers me, he said, his voice full of awe. She remembers everything, Hannah replied. The pain, the tears, but also the kindness. She doesn't forget even. Tom reached into his coat pocket and placed something on the table, a small brass medallion. Worn. Faded. Shaped like a crescent moon. Each prototype was given a symbol, he said. This was hers, Project Moonlight. It was meant to trap her. But if you scratch out the interior tag, it becomes just a charm. A token. Something to remember her by. Hannah picked it up, rubbing her thumb across the cool metal. She said nothing, but slipped it into her pocket. That night, they made their decision. Hannah stood at the edge of the yard, watching as the sun set behind the trees. She felt Noah step beside her. You sure? She asked. He nodded. She wants to go. She told you? He shrugged. Not with words. They packed everything they could carry. Blankets. Formula. The puppies. Dr. Martinez had left a medical bag in case of emergencies, and Reyes had arranged a temporary ID set for travel. By sunrise, they were gone. Tom drove. Noah rode in the back with the puppies. Luna sat up front, her head resting on Hannah's lap, eyes watching the world slip by through the glass. They didn't talk much on the drive. Words weren't needed. The route wound through forests and valleys, avoiding major roads, passing through forgotten towns and gas stations that hadn't raised prices in years. At one stop, an old woman handed Noah a carved wooden dog. No charge. Just smiled and said, "For you, guardian." Noah named the carving Starlight. It stayed with him from that moment on. By the third day, they reached the gate. It was hidden behind an orchard, miles from anything that resembled civilization. Two people emerged, a woman in her 60s with windburned cheeks and a younger man with an easy gait and a camera slung around his shoulder. They didn't ask for names. They just saw Luna, saw the look in Hannah's eyes, and opened the gate. "This way," the woman said. The compound was more of a sanctuary than a base. Wide open fields, a small clinic, a cabin per animal. All lived freely, some former service dogs, others who'd simply been broken by the system and left behind. Luna stepped onto the grounds and paused. Then walked forward, her puppies trailing behind like stars around the sun. "She'll be safe here," the younger man said. "And so will you." "We're not here to stay," Hannah said. "Just to rest. Then, we'll find the next place." He smiled gently. "There's always a next place." That night, as the Thayu crackled in a pit surrounded by sleeping dogs, Hannah, Noah, and Luna sat together beneath the stars. The seventh puppy climbed into Noah's lap and fell asleep. "She's different," Noah whispered. "I know," Hannah replied. "So are you." He leaned against her, small and warm. "Will they ever stop coming?" "Maybe not," she said honestly. "But we'll always be ready." Luna raised her head to the sky. Somewhere deep in the darkness, a low hum echoed. Not a sound, but a signal. A message to others like her. You are not alone. You are not forgotten. You are more than what they made you. And the forest listened. And the world changed.